सुसाइड वुसाइड इन चीजों पे क्या हो गया भाई? कुछ नहीं होता यार इन चीजों से। मे शुड बी ashamed of yourself टू इवन थिंक लाइक दैट। ये सुसाइड करके क्या मतलब? आप एक तरफ कह रहे हो प्राउड करना है, दूसरे सुसाइड करके जिंदगी भर का गम दोगे माँ बाप को? मतलब दे वर्क देयर एसेस ऑफ। आई एम श्योर दे नॉट हैविंग अ पिकनिक लिविंग अवे फ्रॉम यू 11 साल से। ठीक है ना? आपकी भलाई के लिए ही आपको पढ़ाया लिखाया, इतना पैसा खर्च किया इसलिए कि मरे हुए मिलो एक दिन कमरे में। गलत बात है बेटा, क्यों उनको दुख दोगे? वो जिंदगी भर के लिए मर जाएंगे। आई हैव सीन पे।
Salam Namaste friends. So I divided this video essay into 3 parts. First, I'll give you a very brief overview of the famous YouTuber Junaid. Second, I'll show you a brief clip that actually led me to making this entire video essay. And third, I will explain what was wrong and deeply harmful in that video. But before we start anything, a quick disclaimer: this is not meant for bashing Junaid Akram or dissing anything at all. This is just meant to bring up an issue that Junaid might be misinformed about. I'm just saying might. Also, I'm a staunch mental health advocate. I have had some history also in this area myself, and my knowledge comes from extensive reading and some courses. So let's begin. Part 1. Who is Junaid Akram? Well, Junaid is one of Pakistan's well-known YouTubers and has been making videos for the last few years. I personally have consumed a fair amount of Junaid's videos because I appreciate his take on many issues and respect him for taking up so many initiatives that most privileged people are not even bothered with. His videos with experts in the community, helping young people with their life and career decisions is all highly commendable work. But like we all are humans and bound to make errors, Junaid is also bound to make some errors. Part 2. The actual issue. So recently someone asked Junaid about their problems and mentioned suicidal thoughts. Let's watch the portion of video so you can see what I'm talking about.
अगर सुसाइड वुसाइड इन चीजों पे क्या हो गया भाई? कुछ नहीं होता यार इन चीजों से। मे बी यूर नॉट कट फॉर अ जॉब, मे बी दिस इज अल्लाह's मैसेज टू यू। मुझे भी नहीं जॉब मिल रही थी, फिर मैंने वीडियोस बनाई, वीडियोस चल पड़ी, तो फिर अल्लाह में आके थोड़ी बताएंगे बेटा तेरा मकसद जिंदगी का ये नहीं है, ये आपको खुद ढूंढना होता है। सो इफ यू नॉट गेटिंग जॉब्स, मे बी यूर नॉट कट फॉर इट, मे बी यूर डेस्टिन्ड टू डू सम बिजनेस। कभी वो सोचा इस बारे में? मे बी यूर डेस्टिन्ड टू डू समथिंग एल्स। उस तरह भी सोचो। ये सुसाइड करके क्या मतलब? आप एक तरफ कह रहे हो प्राउड करना है, दूसरे सुसाइड करके जिंदगी भर का गम दोगे माँ बाप को? मतलब दे वर्क देयर एसेस ऑफ। आई एम श्योर दे नॉट हैविंग अ पिकनिक लिविंग अवे फ्रॉम यू 11 साल से। ठीक है ना? आपकी भलाई के लिए ही आपको पढ़ाया लिखाया, इतना पैसा खर्च किया इसलिए कि मरे हुए मिलो एक दिन कमरे में। गलत बात है बेटा, क्यों उनको दुख दोगे? वो जिंदगी भर के लिए मर जाएंगे। आई हैव सीन पेरेंट्स हु हैव लॉस्ट देयर चिल्ड्रन एंड स्पेशली टू सुसाइड। ठीक है? वो फिर जिंदगी में देखो, अगर तो खुदा ना खास्ता किसी बच्चे का एक्सीडेंट हो गया, या किसी झगड़े में मारा गया, या ड्रग ओवरडोज हो गई, वो एक एक्सीडेंट के तौर पे समझाते हैं कि चलो यार वी couldn't do anything about it। ठीक है? रोड पे जा रहा था, गाड़ी ठुक गई, अब क्या कर सकते हैं? अफसोस तो है। बट सुसाइड इज लाइक प्रो मैक्स किस्म का, कि हमने क्या कोताही की बेटा कि वो जीना ही नहीं चाह रहा था। हमने इतनी मेहनत से उसको पाला पोसा, बड़ा किया, पढ़ाया लिखाया, खर्च किया, हर चीज का ख्याल किया, ये चाहिए ये दे दिया, वो चाहिए वो दे दिया। क्या हम इतने वो जो सुसाइडेड पेरेंट्स होते हैं ना, समझ रहे हैं आप, जिनके बच्चों ने सुसाइड की, वो फिर अपने आप को जिंदगी भर के लिए लूजर और फेलियर, जो चीज आप फील कर रहे हो ना, आप उनको ये देके जाओगे। एंड टिल द डे दे डाई दे विल क्राई एवरी मॉर्निंग लुकिंग एट योर पिक्चर्स, और आपका फेवरेट तकिया नजर आ जाएगा घर में, आपके कपड़े लटके हुए होंगे। औलाद का गम इससे बड़ा गम दुनिया में कोई नहीं है, दुनिया में कोई गम नहीं है। और एंड लाइक दिस इज हाउ यू वांट टू रिपे योर पेरेंट्स। एक तरफ कह रहे हो प्राउड करना है, दूसरी तरफ ये करना है आपको। यू शुड बी ashamed of yourself टू इवन थिंक लाइक दैट। आप माशाल्लाह लम्स के ग्रेजुएट हो, नस्ट से पढ़े हो, ये वो यूनिवर्सिटीज है जहां पे हर बच्चा एस्पायर करता है पढ़ने के लिए, करोड़ों बच्चा हर साल, राइट? एंड यू गॉट टू बी rubbing shoulders with the people there, and this is what you're coming to? Nahin, this is not a courageous way out. You should be courageous. लाइफ जितनी बार गिराए उतनी बार कर, स्लिंकी बन जाओ, यो बन जाओ, जितनी बार लाइफ फेंके वापस आ जाओ, बोलो ऐसी की तैसी। जिंदगी तो है ही हार्ड भाई, इजी वे तो किसी के लिए भी नहीं है। सो डोंट थिंक लाइक दैट, ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट वे यू डूइंग थिंग्स रॉन्ग। और ये रिश्ते विश्ते वेट कर लेंगे भाई, ये कहीं नहीं भागे जा रही लड़कियां। किसी मकाम पे पहुंच जाओगे ना, खुद ही निकल आएंगे बहुत सारे सैयद का, आपको पता नहीं होगा ये कहां से आ गए। वंस यू आर एट अ सर्टेन लेवल इन लाइफ, सो डोंट थिंक लाइक दीज थिंग्स। और नहीं, दिस इज नॉट अ करेजियस मूव। ख्याल रखो अपना।
कभी किसी गठिया के मरीज को कहा है कि तुम्हें शर्म आनी चाहिए, यू शुड बी अशेम्ड ऑफ योरसेल्फ? कभी किसी डायबिटीज के मरीज को कहा है आपने कि तुम्हें करेज नहीं है इसलिए तुम्हारी शुगर बार बार बढ़ जा रही है, यू आर वीक, लाइफ इज टफ एंड यू आर नॉट ट्राइंग इनफ? Part 3. The problem with that response. The only reason I decided to make a whole video essay in response is because, as Junaid mentioned in his video, plenty of people write to him about suicidal thoughts. This is not just something one specific individual faced, which means the problem is social and on a much larger scale than we can imagine, hence the need for a video. So here it is. Dear Junaid, suicide is not selfish. Just how diabetes is not selfish, thyroid is not selfish, and cancer is not selfish. In the same video, someone who was dying of cancer was seeking some advice. Your reaction to them was absolutely different from what you gave to the suicidal guy. You were able to have sympathy for him. You gave duas to him. You asked your viewers to pray for him. And all that was perfect. It was well deserved and worthy of such attention and prayers. However, contrast it to the suicidal guy, and you see a difference. Now, many of you will ask, well, cancer is something that just happened. He didn't choose it. He didn't choose cancer, and he has no control over it. He probably wants to live a long and happy, healthy life, but cancer does not let him live. He can't avoid cancer, right? But suicide is an action to end one's life that someone is deliberately choosing. So it is not the same thing. Well, what if I told you it is the same thing in many ways? What if I told you that suicide is the last symptom of the mental illness called depression? What if I told you that depression is not a choice and it can't just go away because one day you decided you won't be depressed anymore? Yes, this is true. As author Matt Haig puts it, suicide is not selfish. Suicide is normally death caused by the illness of depression. It is the final symptom, a final collapse under unbearable weight. Suicide is a tragedy. If you've never been close to that edge, try not to judge what you don't understand. And to give you an example of how Muslims view suicide, just while making this video, a news surfaced on my Twitter timeline in which a woman makes a video, bids adieu, and jumps into the river because her husband and his family were demanding dowry, and her parents even gave 1.5 lakh to her husband, but things remained unchanged. So she shifted to her parents' house, and even after that, the domestic abuse and everything didn't end. So she ended her life. It is such a sad news. And see the reaction that came to my timeline. Some guy is saying, sorry sister, for you, आपने हराम मौत को चुना, सब्र नहीं किया, and showed your disappointment to God. Really sorry for people like you. This is the exact reason why people don't seek help, because of this judgment, because of this attitude. If you have trouble understanding any of this, let me show you a visual representation of depression. So in this picture, you can see there are three zones. There's a green zone, there's an orange zone, and there's a red zone. When you are in the green zone, you can function your daily life activities. You may feel like you are just floating on water, like something bad might happen. A person in the orange zone has moderately intense symptom. They might feel like they're treading water. A person in the red zone has very intense symptoms, something like they might say, I feel like I'm drowning, like I can't take this anymore. And this, by the way, is from a Twitter account that is known as the Real Depression Project. You can follow them and learn more about it. So what they say, that depression is an illness, and some days when you're in the green zone, you can work for long hours, do all the chores, and other days you even struggle to have a shower. You struggle to get out of bed. That's how difficult it can be, and that's when you are in the red zone. You can fake a smile and you can attend social events, like you're going to parties, going to your office, and people may say, oh yeah, he's a great guy and she's happy in her life. But on other days, you want to hide in your room and recharge, and you want to wait for the storm to pass. So please, I'm begging you to understand this, and don't make someone who have to prove how unwell they are to you. They are fighting an invisible illness that is life-threatening. Now, I didn't want this video essay to be based on lack of factual information, so I wanted to show you the extent of the problem. So get ready to get your minds blown. You ready? Hear this out. Pakistan is home to about 200 million people, but has one of the poorest mental health indicators, and less than 500 psychiatrists for this population size. Oh my God, can you even imagine? This paucity of mental health professionals in Pakistan creates a massive treatment gap. leaving more than 90% of people with common mental disorders untreated. Psychiatrist Sihan Sikandar noted this, as well as the impact of our social and economic circumstances on mental health, and especially how vulnerable women are, in this article published in The Lancet Psychiatry in October 2020. And one of the main causes noted for such terrible mental health is this stigma around it. This guilt that you throw at people when they mention suicidal thoughts. Can you imagine if someone tells us their hair is falling fistfuls or their bones are unstable, and we tell them, "Oh my God, how selfish you are." That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Please read the full article in the link on the link in the description below. Another piece of research that will help you understand why this got me so freaking riled up, or at least riled up enough to make an entire damn video essay investing more than 60 hours of my time in this. A research project done by an author named Dr. Murad Musa Khan from the Department of Psychiatry, Aga Khan University of Pakistan, for a book called Oxford Textbook of Suicidology and Suicide Prevention. And between pages 774 to 775, he did a project called The Economic Burden of Mental Health in Pakistan, and he wrote a chapter on suicide prevention in Pakistan, okay? So he says that despite the massive increase in Pakistan in suicide rates, there's no credible data collected on suicides and mental health. Is rarely mentioned in official records. My goodness, can you even imagine? Suicide is a condemned act in Islam. Remember that comment from before? So he says that traditionally suicide numbers were low, but in recent years they have shown an increase, and suicide has become a major public health problem in Pakistan. There are no official statistics on suicide from Pakistan. Suicide deaths are not included in the national annual mortality statistics. National rates are neither known nor reported to the World Health Organization. Under Pakistani law, based on the tenet of Islam, both suicide and deliberate self-harm are illegal acts punishable with a jail term and a financial penalty. Can you imagine going through a severe depressive outbreak, and then when you attempt something like this, you get punished for it, you get fined for it? Wow, geniuses. All suicide cases must be taken to one of the government's hospitals designated as medical legal centers, MLC. In deliberate self-harm cases, many people avoid going to these centers for fear of harassment by the police and the stigma. Instead, they seek treatment from private hospitals that neither diagnose suicide nor report them to the police. So, incidences of suicide and self-harm are therefore grossly underestimated in Pakistan. Dr. Murad Khan also notes that depression is implicated in more than 90% of suicides. It is estimated for every suicide, there are at least 10 to 20 self-harm acts. Can you imagine? If only people were not judgmental about self-harm, how many of these lives could be saved? Based on current figures, there would be in excess of 100,000 deliberate self-harm acts in Pakistan annually. A previous history of deliberate self-harm is one of the strongest predictors of future suicide. Along with medical management of deliberate self-harm, the underlying psychological issues should be addressed as well. Every self-harm subject, no matter how innocuous the act may appear, should receive a psychiatrist assessment. Training emergency room personnel so they can contribute significantly to suicide prevention. And the most important part, the criminalization of the deliberate self-harm has led to a stigma, avoidance of health-seeking help, and lack of involvement of professionals and limitations in developing innovative programs for suicide prevention. There is an urgent need to reveal and repeal the law regarding self-harm and suicide in Pakistan so that people who need psychological help can do so without fear of being persecuted by the police. Crisis intervention centers and suicide prevention telephone hotlines play an important role in helping suicidal people, as shown in neighboring country Sri Lanka. There is a need to establish such services in Pakistan. Dr. Khan talked about the lack of a proper suicide prevention hotline in 2009, and in 2021, I don't think there still is a national level hotline in Pakistan for suicide prevention. I mean, I did my research and found some links and numbers, but nothing too stable. You can check out and tell me. There was a mention of Umang Mental Health NGO, but there was nothing so immediate that could help someone in crisis. So there it is. This is all I found, and numbers don't even seem to be working, but you can check and tell me if they do. As per the UCL University website, suicide is a complex issue. It is never possible to truly understand why someone chooses to take their own life. However, we can all learn and understand enough so that we are able to support people who may be experiencing emotional difficulties and suicidal feelings. According to the International Association for Suicide Prevention, suicide usually occurs gradually, progressing from suicidal thoughts to planning to attempting suicide and finally dying by suicide. So most people thinking of suicide let others know, consciously or unconsciously. Therefore, if we know how to respond, suicide can be a preventable death. They suggest that when someone mentions suicidal thoughts to you, you need to encourage them to talk, not to judge them. Starting the conversation gives the person permission to speak and offers some relief from the pressure of constantly thinking about suicide. Some people may mention suicidal feelings openly when others may find it difficult to say it directly that they are feeling suicidal. So they may instead state that they just want to disappear, feel like they're being a burden to others. It's like the whole world is against me, or another similar statement to this effect. In such circumstances, it is recommended to ask the person directly if they are having suicidal thoughts. Remember that talking about suicide does not increase the risk of it. Encouraging the person to stay connected and involved with the study and activities is also recommended. Be there for them, but acknowledge your limitations and refer to professional support. That guy who wrote to you, Junaid, is having suicidal thoughts, which means he is most probably in the red zone. And he was looking for help, support, and sympathy. Instead, what Junaid did was offer judgment, guilt, and, oh no, confusion. Really? Honestly, a person speaking of suicide is already a red zone depression patient, and you just threw a mountain of guilt over him that his parents have higher expectations from him. His parents will miss him and all that. OMG, that was the worst thing you could have possibly said. Because if you didn't pick up on the signals, he is depressed because of the parental pressure, which you even referred to in the beginning. And now we're gonna talk about it. When someone is pressured and drowning in depression, you don't guilt them for feeling that way. You validate their feelings. You tell them they need a break from all the job applications and rishta nonsense. You basically ask them to seek professional help. Go talk to a therapist. Because unless that person's mental health is better, he won't be able to do anything else in his life. Don't you get that? And my guess is that the first thing the therapist will advise is to bring in the damn parents and tell the parents to stop pressuring the guy so much, or they might lose him. Do you know how many Desi students kill themselves by suicide every year? Students from grand institutions with wealthy family backgrounds. Do you know why they do it? Because their family pressure. And sometimes their own high expectations make them obsessed with high grades and accomplishments, and anything less than is just unacceptable. Junaid himself talked about this so many times on his videos. Parents bullying their children to marry a stranger just because they think this is the way. Parents putting undue pressure on kids to achieve things. This kid seemed to be in his 20s when he was out of school and now out in the real world. His CV indicates that he has been through some great institutions, which means his family, his friend circle, and all of his people around him have set high expectations of him. And that pressure is mounting. And he's cracking under it because life in school is over. And the real world, those grades only matter so much. This kid probably isn't getting jobs because his desperation and anxiety is visible to the interviewers. This parental pressure to marry in a certain family or have a certain doctor, engineer, lawyer wala career and all that. Please don't pretend all Desi kids have not gone through this at home to one extent or another. And as a child of ideal parents, I can absolutely empathize with him. This pressure that we are providing everything for you, which means you should automatically be okay with life. You're not allowed to feel anything but happy because we have given you the perfect life. Oh my God, life doesn't work that way. और भी दुख हैं ज़माने में गरीबी और भूखमरी के सिवा. Of course, India and Pakistan are not much different in that way. And at this side of the border, things aren't great for young people either. An article from 2019 that states parental pressure is the root cause for fucking depression in children and youths expanded on this well. This is what happens in most households in our country with children unable to cope with the supremely high demands set by parents. Before the child is even born, they are expected to become the best engineers, doctors, lawyers, or government servants, among others, that the pressure becomes unbearable for them. Our children are being brought to a world which is driven by hyper competition and perfectionism. where success means the highest status, performance, and appearance. These unreasonable standards weigh heavy on children whose mental tolerance remains far away from maturing. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 4 children between the age group of 13 and 15 in India are depressed. How pathetic is that? The state of academic pressure and parental pressure on our children is such that every hour a student commits suicide. Every hour. Depression, anxiety, bipolar disorders, disruptive behavior disorders, and several other mental health problems are severely affecting children's development. Parental pressure is like a hurricane that never leaves and can take other forms, such as pressure on sports, music, drama, and even socialization. It takes a severe toll on children's confidence and approach towards life. Parents must understand that their children are living in a world where they may face racial, sexual, or religious discrimination, body shaming, hormonal challenges, family or financial problems, violence, etc. All these concerns contribute to poor academic performance, lack of motivation, social interaction problems, and even self-harm. On top of all this, the stigma behind mental health in our country is another giant that stands high above children. During such circumstances, some parents even go into denial, resorting to statements like, "My child has no such problems, this is just a slump. He or she will get over it." But how will they get over it if the pressure continues to rise until the bottle bursts? Depression is not something that is gotten over with like a rip of a band-aid. It requires months and sometimes even years to heal through constant emotional support from loved ones. Parents must begin by taking responsibility for the pressure they have caused before causing traumatic experiences, if they haven't already. They must understand the fragile state of children's mental well-being and assess it proactively. Children look up to their parents and seek their love and support. Parents can therefore bring a turnaround in their child's emotional and mental state. They must also confide in and consult with teachers who can help in identifying symptoms of mental health and patterns. It must also be understood that every child's coping mechanism is different and works on a different space. Demanding parents must alter their entire approach towards depressed children and hold their hand in every step of the way. They must first talk to their children and work towards becoming their confidants. Parents must ask their children what they really want, how they as parents can be better, whether they require counseling and professional help, whether they want to talk to someone else in the family. If pressure hasn't worked during early adolescence, it probably never will, which is why all signs must point to emotional and mental support while pressure is thrown out of the window. Another study that will blow your mind is this study from 2017 that found a direct link between parenting behaviors and suicide. The University of Cincinnati professors asked parents, "How often do you tell your kids they did a good job? Do you say you're proud of them? Do you help with homework? Are you emotionally engaged with your kids?" Startlingly, the findings showed that the age group most significantly impacted by parenting behaviors was 12 and 13-year-old children. What a shame. Children in that age group with parents who never or rarely told them they were proud of them were nearly 5 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts, nearly 7 times more likely to formulate a suicide plan, and about 7 more freaking times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. Similarly, 12 and 13-year-olds with parents who rarely or never told them they did a good job or helped them with their homework were at excessively high risk for suicide. Aarti Sharma's doctoral thesis for Arizona State University shows a significant path between parental pressure combined with academic stress leading to suicides in young people. She says that the cost of chronic perceptions of pressure and desire to meet unreasonably high parental expectations has also been linked to countless negative physical and mental health consequences among Asians and Indians, of course. That individuals with higher self-esteem may not internalize parental pressure in the same way as do individuals with low self-esteem. So that guy who wrote to Junaid was also suffering from low self-esteem, which was indicated by his job rejections and rishta rejections. Can you now see how his self-esteem, low self-esteem actually, combined with parental pressure, was keeping him depressed, which was causing him suicidal thoughts? The research literally says, and I quote, in Indian culture, finding a job or a career with higher earning capacity and bringing honor and prestige to one's family can be perceived as a form of duty to one's parents. Isn't that exactly what the guy said? In fact, research says, given that stress was defined by Lazarus and Folkman as perceiving oneself as unable to meet the demands or expectations of the environment, it would make sense that feeling overwhelmed with stress would lead to feelings of depression. Common feelings associated with depression include hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. When an individual repeatedly experiences demands that seem to exceed their perceived capacity, over time they may feel helpless at being able to handle these circumstances. Additionally, without control over the conditions they face, such as excessive homework or fear of disappointing respected adults, and repeated exposure to this stress, they may feel hopeless about whether their situation will ever improve. That they are unable to manage the situation or improve independently may make them feel worthless and lose interest in life. It is a well-known fact that the best predictor of future suicide probability is past suicidal behavior. That 69 of these participants attempted to end their lives based on this pressure is just a tragedy. Have you seen when some celebrity dies by suicide, the kind of shit people talk about them? Or you can think about the guy whose screenshot I showed you. Like, oh my god, what jerks. He was so rich. Why did he have to kill himself? Oh no, she was so perfect and beautiful. What a fool to kill herself. She's definitely going to Jahannam. Or he just ruined his chance to enter Jannah. Please, 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 I am begging you all to stop with these accusations and assumptions about mentally ill people. Depressed people often get bipolar, some get manic, some get severe anxiety attacks. ये तो वही बात होगी कि मैंने खाना खा लिया तो दुनिया में भूखमरी खत्म हो गई. Just because something is not a big deal to you does not mean it is not a big deal to someone else. We are all different people. We have different life experiences, different childhoods, different struggles. And please, can we stop making this an Olympic of pain and struggle? Can we stop judging whose pain is worse and who gets to deserve our sympathy and not? You offered so much love and sympathy to the guy with cancer, which was accurate. But your sympathy for the depressed guy was absolutely absent. At least with cancer, the doctor told the guy he has 3 months to live. A person on the verge of suicidal thoughts is in the last stage of depression, and he may not even have survived long enough to watch your video. Just because you can see symptoms of cancer does not mean mental illness can be taken lightly or given such a deeply apathetic response or think that it is not fatal. No one is choosing to die because it's fun for them. This guy seemed clinically depressed, and you said it yourself, Junaid, that when something like this happens, often parents blame themselves, that somehow they were responsible. I would go ahead and say with confidence that yes, his parents are responsible for his depression, and God forbid if something happens to him, it's parents like this who are responsible, and they deserve to feel like shit for the rest of their lives. And for those of you, Mummy Papa ke dulare, you are all going to issue fatwas against me now when I tell you that there is actually academic research holding parents accountable, like literally they're asking for sending those parents to jail whose kids die by suicide. So a research paper by Vanessa Guardianos for the Journal of Civil Rights and Economic Development was published called Adolescent Suicide, a Call for Parental Liability. In this paper, Guardianos argues that lawsuits should be brought against parents who emotionally neglect their offspring and that courts should not shy away from this type of litigation. There are 2 reasons for this conclusion. The first is that suicide is an emotional act and parents have a direct effect on the emotional well-being of their children. Second reason draws to a parallel with schools. Schools have long been held liable for student suicide. If schools can be held to a legal standards, then parents should be held to an even higher standard of responsibility. I mean, can you imagine? क्या आप सोच सकते हैं देसी कल्चर में अगर ऐसा कुछ हो गया तो इंडिया पाकिस्तान के सारे पेरेंट्स ही जेल में पाए जाएंगे सिवाय एक आध को छोड़ के. I have provided the link to this paper in the description, but it will absolutely blow your mind to see the amount of research already done that proves how parental relations are a major factor in depression, self-harm, and suicidal tendencies of young people. I mean, there are a lot of other factors why someone could be suicidal. लेकिन इस paper में, इस video में, I'm only focusing on the condition of the guy in the video, which seemed like parental pressure was causing him this depression. So The paper says, while legislators and courts have declined to hold parents liable for emotional neglect and adolescent suicides, scientific research and empirical evidence demonstrate a direct connection between the parent-child relationship and suicide. So, nahi, aap bhag nahi sakte, you can't excuse. The concept of warm interaction between parent and child exists where the parent uses positive communication mediation. Ya Allah, that just makes me so mad that how many lives could have been saved if only their parents talked to them with love and warmth instead of guilt and rejection. शर्मा जी का बेटा देखो उसने क्या किया, मिश्रा जी की बेटी देखो उसने क्या किया, फलाने साहब के लड़के ने क्या किया, उन साहब की लड़की ने क्या किया. My goodness, it never ends, does it? Every single day, young women in their 20s and 30s write to me telling how parents are forcing them to give up their studies, torch their dreams and ambitions, and marry someone they picked. I literally made an entire video about this young woman whose parents arranged her marriage and now they're forcing her not to divorce a highly abusive husband. Another study published in the International Journal for Public Mental Health and Neurosciences titled Parental Pressures, a Major Stress Factor for Children in India, an approach paper. Exactly same यही बोल रहा है जो मैं बोल रही हूँ. Parental pressure with increase in levels of education and growth in the middle class families. The expectations of parents from their children have seen a manifold increase. So there is also a tendency to achieve through their children what they could not achieve in their lives. खुद तो कुछ बन नहीं पाए बच्चे को गिल्ट मार मार के बोलते रहो कि ये बनो या वो बनो. This puts enormous pressure on the children who are unable to cope with it. Children as young as 9 years of age have begun to contemplate suicide. 9 years, can you imagine? 9 साल का बच्चा suicide सोच रहा है. Believing that if they do not achieve a set standard of academic excellence, their parents will not want them anymore. कितनी दुख की, अफसोस की और शर्म से डूब मरने की बात है. Majority of the parents believe that excellence in education is the only way for success in life. The emphasis on a few disciplines of studies such as engineering or medicine, which still persist in our society, makes the parents to push their child towards these disciplines. Hence, without understanding the interest of the child or his or her capabilities, parents push the children into fields of study that the child is ill-equipped in to excel. So thereby they are sowing the seeds of non-performance. जाहिर बात है बच्चे का जब इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं है किसी फील्ड में तो चाहे आप कितनी ही उस पर पनिशमेंट्स लगा दो, कितना ही गिल्ट मार लो, कितना ही क्या ही कर लेगा बच्चा. Research has found that children growing up under strong parental pressure suffer from self-esteem and confidence issues. The child might become withdrawn and sullen, which could lead to lack of satisfaction as an adult. Too much pressure from parents also makes the child become doubtful about his or her intelligence and abilities. मतलब बच्चा खुद को ही डाउट कर रहा है. This hinders their learning and growth to become a wholesome human being. I mean, research after research after research indicates this. How bad, kitni ghatiya is our desi parenting style. That is clearly leading young people to death. And here we are telling them how wrong they are and they have no right to feel that way. माँ बाप की सोचो, उनको दुख होगा. This kid who wrote to you, Junaid, is severely damaged goods. And as you said, his family was abroad and all that happy पैसे वाले पढ़े लिखे घर के लोग हैं. It seemed like this pretending to be happy and pretending to keep up with the family's expectations is literally killing him. Pretending to be grateful to them all the time while he himself is already feeling guilty, feeling like a failure, feeling like he's not enough, like he's letting them down. Oh my God, what an awful feeling it is. Just don't ask. I've been there. And the best you could come up with is parents की सोचो. Parents को दुख होगा मर जाओगे तो तुम. Oh my God, the parents who are already messing with his personal life and not giving him any breathing room, any control over his life decisions. You made him feel guilty about those loser parents whose son is on the verge of suicide asking for help with strangers on the internet. Because the parents are fucking clueless. And this also has been proven through research in the official journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics. There is a paper published in 2019 called the Parent-Adolescent Agreement about Adolescent Suicidal Thoughts. In this paper, researchers interviewed more than 5,000 adolescents aged 11 to 17. In those interviews, they asked them if they had ever thought about killing themselves or if they had ever thought a lot about death or dying. There wasn't a whole lot of matchup. Half of the parents of the adolescents who thought of killing themselves were unaware. as were 3/4 of the parents of adolescents who thought often about death. So parents may miss signs of depression in their teens, or quite genuinely misinterpret them or attribute them to something innocent. After all, it's natural to want to believe that your child is fine, rather than thinking they might be freaking suicidal. Guys, everyone watching this, please know that this video is not calling out Junaid, because that would imply that someone is doing something bad on purpose. I'm not implying that at all. In fact, Junaid seems to be such an open-minded person. My hope is that he will maybe, just maybe, watch this and try and understand that depression is not a choice, and suicidal thoughts are a symptom of that depression that can happen with anyone. And that guy deserved a lot more love, sympathy, and help from you and from us all. And since so many people write to you, confide in you, and go through mental health issues all on their own, I deeply encourage you to have better responses for anyone talking about depression and suicide. Please encourage them to seek immediate professional help. I know in Desi culture there's so much ignorance about mental health. You tell your mom and dad, and they might be saying things like the meanest of things. What have you got to be depressed about? Haven't we done enough for you? What do you freaking want from us? Or go for a walk and you'll be fixed. Or the worst kinds of people will force you to seek black magic or whatever. And I know, I'm a Muslim too. Duas have a place. But just how corona could not be treated with dua, you are getting vaccinated to fight against corona, aren't you? Just like that, depression won't go away with dua and few extra prayers or this surah or that surah. I can't believe this still needs to be said, because Muslims will attack me for this, but yes, I'm confidently telling you that medical professional help is the only right solution to mental health problems. It could be therapy, it could be antidepressants, it could be anything, but that's for your doctor, a proper psychiatrist, to decide. No wonder people are ashamed to talk about all these things, and because the minute they mention it, they are being shamed and guilted into feeling like they did something wrong on purpose, like they have a choice and they're deliberately choosing to be depressed. For the last time, it doesn't work that way. Just how you can't choose diabetes, you can't choose mental health and depression. There are several factors at play. Please respect people with suicidal thoughts. When someone tells you such a thing, please consider that you may be the last person they might be talking to. So tread carefully. If you want them to live, suggest them to seek proper medical help and not guilt them into living. By guilting them, you have done the exact same thing that you were not supposed to do. Guilt is not what makes people choose life. Being heard, being understood, being validated, being loved, even if it is by strangers online on a video, is what can save someone's life. So once again, I did not mean to bash Junaid Akram or imply that he's a bad person in any way. So please don't come after me for that. Junaid Akram is a great guy. His content is helping a lot of people and he's worthy of my respect. I only meant to bring light on an issue that many of his viewers are affected by, and he didn't have the best response. And in my opinion, Junaid Akram can definitely do better in that area. So Junaid, I hope you do 3 things right away. Number 1, email back that guy and maybe suggest this video essay or say something which make him feel heard and understood by someone. Point 2, point him towards any good suicide helpline or hotline that you're confident are working and are professional and not judgmental. Point 3, for people who write to you about depression or suicide, please point them towards the right professionals and resources. Overall, I deeply urge you, Junaid, to maintain mental health related resources, community level projects, so that this issue can get the attention it deserves. If it's anyone in Pakistan, it's you who can do this. Your library initiative is commendable, and I see you do so much in other areas too. I can't recall properly, but I think I saw a video of yours talking to a mental health professional on your channel. So I know you already are the best person to be doing something about this issue. So with that, I wish you well, and if anyone here is going through anything like this, I have mentioned some resources. I'm begging you, please don't be bullied or guilted by anyone thinking that you are wrong and selfish for having suicidal thoughts. It is just a symptom of depression, and once you seek help for that depression, it will all go away. So please take that first step. Talk to not a friend, not a family member, not a teacher, a proper mental health professional. Just how your friend can't treat a broken, fractured leg even with the best of intentions in their heart, similarly, no friend can magically cure depression. Only a doctor can. And if you are a parent who might be worried about their children, I have provided a link to an article, 10 things parents can do to prevent suicide. Please read that article, and if you have any questions, please reach out. And don't forget to tell your kids how much they mean to you before it's too late. Allah Hafiz.